Hello. There's a step in every single booktuber's journey where they talk about a YouTube video that got lost to time. And that is what has happened to us in the last 24 hours, because this is actually take two of the video we're trying to record, which is part one in a duology that we're going to do on Darren Shan's Demonata series. It's actually take three because I actually flubbed the first take this evening. So Anna's being very patient with me. Hi, Anna. How you doing?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for being willing to. We're not recording it again. It's too bad. Your phone can ring
No,
down the hallways of time.
no, it's fine. I'll just put it on silence. No worries. People don't mind me.
Cool. Right. Here's the plan. The Demonata series is a 10-book young adult series that we'll get into in a minute. The first 15 minutes, I think we'll do spoiler free, and then the last 45 we'll do spoiler filled. Um, we're going to talk about the first five books today, and the next five books, which we're going to read after recording this video, we'll then do on your channel. But there's two things I guess we need to do before we get going is talk about why we've decided to do this buddy read together, and we need to actually give us kind of brief synopsis of what Demonata is. Shall we start with the first one? Why did you want to read this young adult horror series? How did that come about?
Well, first of all, I read everything. It doesn't matter to me. I read lots of young adult literature and sometimes middle grade. I don't really care, to be honest, about it. But the story was, I think we probably even mentioned it in some of the videos actually in the past. I don't remember, but we definitely spoke about it. Once going to the office, I checked our local free library, and I found five books of the Demonata series. And to be honest, I've never actually heard of this series or about this author because I've never really read them, and I'm not really sure if they were available in Russia, if they were translated when I was of age appropriate, let's say appropriate for the series.
Get to that.
We'll have a conversation about its appropriateness level. But I saw it and I was like, five books of the series. Let's check it on Goodreads. So I checked the ratings, I checked what the series is about. I was like, wow, it's actually 10 books in the series, and they're sure, like relatively short.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there are 10 books, and five of them are here for free.
Mhm.
That's a no-brainer. I just grabbed them and walked away. And that's how I decided to give it a go. I read the first book, and I spoke with you on one of our catch-ups during one of our catch-ups, and you told me that you already read it when you were a child yourself or younger, let's say, and you actually really enjoyed it. Then we just decided to give it a go, and you can relive your memories. And for me, it will be my first sort of journey with Demonata, and we can just compare our thoughts on it and just have this great time.
Yeah, it was kind of like an accidental buddy read, wasn't it? I should say that forgive us if there's any kind of latency or lag. I'm battling a perennial 1 bar of data that's happening in my house. So if we talk over each other, it's not because we're exceptionally rude. Oh, well, I am, but it's not on purpose. But yeah, this is the buddy read that sort of came out of nowhere because I found out that you were reading it, and you're right. I've been reading. No, that's not quite accurate. I have read Darren Shan through a lot of my especially young adult life. So I read his Cirque de Freak series, which is 12 books long. It's kind of young vampires sort of a thing. Um, and I read that in primary school, so up to the age of like 10, 11. And then I read the Demonata series, which is what we're talking about right now. I want to say like 11, 12, 13. I can't say I was much older than that. I might have been 14 at the most, but quite young. And we're going to get into the fact that this series is aimed young and yet is absolutely gruesome and horrific. Not necessarily in a bad way. But yeah, as soon as you told me that you were reading Lord Loth, I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And I've been audiobooking it, and you're right, they're fantastically short. Each audiobook is somewhere between 4 and 6.5 hours long. So the whole series put together is about one Brandon Sanderson book. It's not particularly lengthy whatsoever. But you know what? I didn't mention this in our failed attempt at the video yesterday, Anna. I still see kids in my school reading Darren Shan. He has a zombie series, and there's a couple of kids in my class
Yeah, I've seen it now.
when they're doing personal reading, they are reading that. So he seems to be incredibly popular, Darren Shan, still with that young adult teenage audience. He's still getting people into reading, which, for better or worse, is a wonderful thing. And it's really nice to see people actually getting into his books. And I've heard, and I didn't say this yesterday to you either, that apparently the stuff after Demonata, we're going to be talking about how gruesome it is. Apparently the stuff that comes after is even worse, man. I don't know if you've seen any comments to that in that regard, but apparently he kicks it up a notch after Demonata, and not
In
Simmer's.
which series? About the zombies, so in which one?
I don't know. It might be the zombies one. I guess we'll have to keep going and find out. Um,
Yeah, I'll have to read the rest of his books. I'm actually thinking to start reading Sex the
yep,
Freak after this one.
I'll
So
join
we'll
you.
see. But yes, I'm very excited.
So
I tend to enjoy his books on average. Let's put it this way.
yeah, I think even when they have some holes, and we'll talk about it in a minute, quite frankly.
They're very adventurous. They're very sort of
Yeah,
fast paced, and you just want to keep reading and to see the world to end, basically.
yeah. These five books that we've read, we rank them. I think we rank them quite similarly based on our discussion yesterday. But there's an incredible
Almost,
in
yeah.
how much we enjoy these books, and even
Let's
when
actually go for this one, our ranking again.
hang on, you're missing something. We haven't told anyone what the series is about. First of all,
Okay,
do you want to do
go
that? Or
ahead.
shall I do that? Give the elevator.
No, no, no. You go ahead with this one.
Okay, so okay, I was really hoping you'd do it because it's quite difficult. And this is something I'm
I'll fill
finding
in the
with.
gaps.
Well, this is what I'm finding with booktube is the hardest thing of all is talking about like a standalone story. I think I'm much better at like frittering between things than saying.
Okay, I can do it if you want.
Well, now the gauntlet's been thrown down, so I feel like I have to. Shall I do it? And then you can pick
No,
up.
no,
Okay,
go ahead.
so
I'll fill in the gaps.
Okay, Demonata series by Darren Shan is a 10-book series. We have read books 1 through 5. I read books 6 through 10, but a long time ago. So basically, it's very, very fuzzy. Um, in this series, without getting into spoilers, you're following three protagonists, um, each of whom are the POV perspective of one or more books. So in these first 5 books, books 1, 3, and 5, you follow a character called Grubs Grady, who's the worst. Book 2, you're following a character called Colonel Fleck. And then book 4, you're following a character called Beck. And I believe her name is just that one word, Beck.
Yeah, back.
The premise of the Demonata series is that anyone can die at any time. And so because there's three POV protagonists, basically they're all fair game, or they could all be fair game. The actual plot itself centers, surprisingly enough, around demons, but it's not supernatural demons in the sense of like gods and spirits and ghosts. It's not that kind of demons. It's more just kind of like monsters from other universes where magic exists and magic portals open and these demons, these monsters from other worlds can flood in and wreak havoc on humans. And we kind of follow main characters who are trying to stop the horde of demons entering our world and more particularly really thwart the schemes of one of the kind of head honcho demons, a cheerful chap called Lord Loss. And so they all interact with Lord Loss to some extent throughout the 5 books, and he's kind of the Voldemort-ish figure, I guess you could kind of draw a
Yeah.
parallel there. And yeah, that's each book is set in a different time period, or some of them are, and they all have different standalone plots. Um, but they all do kind of thread together, and I think as we reach towards the end of book 5, we're beginning to see those threads come together. Did I miss anything significant? I think that was okay, wasn't it?
No, it's okay. Maybe just explain about Grabs Grady, how the Lord Lost starts.
Okay, so the first, I'm gonna vague. We should probably call it spoiler light, vague spoilers, because there are things you kind of have to touch on. The first 30, 40 pages of book 1, which is called Lord Loss, are incredibly brutal and dark. So if you're very spoiler sensitive, just flick off and we'll see you when you finish the first 5 books. Because you kind of have to talk about how the series opens, which is that you have this early teenage character. I kind of put him at about 13, called Grubs Grady. Um, and the trigger for him getting involved in the world of the Demonata is that his parents and sister are killed horrifically. And the parallel I drew with you yesterday, Anna, I know you haven't read it, is Berserk. Berserk has this
Yeah,
element of sexual violence, which is not in the Demonata series, but Berserk is also
at least something.
yeah, there's one kind of violence that isn't there because in Berserk is notorious for you opening the page and you'll just be hit with something really, really horrific and gruesome and horrendous. And that's very much how this series feels from the beginning because Grubbs Grady doesn't just see his parents and sister die. He watches it happen and it is like it's 10 out of 10 gruesome. So like entrails are being ripped out, they are being, I think, like ropes of entrails, and the word entrails comes
Yeah,
up.
just like body parts everywhere, some sort of
And that's how
disturbing.
this story begins. And actually, Lord Lost Book One is one of the more mild books in the series. So I guess if I'm going to pass it back to you, Anna, I've got two questions for you, and they're connected, but they're also not connected. So I guess my first question would be how much have you been enjoying books 1 through 5, and how much of that is because of or in spite of the absolute depravity of the violence on the page?
I actually really enjoy the series, and probably due to its size as well, the size of the books, I found it very easy read between heavier reads. Let's say if I have some longer books or some heavy reading, it's very, very nice to just have one of the books from Demonata. It's just sort of recharges your reading
Yes.
excitement. I really, really like it, to be honest. And as you already mentioned, I think it's very weird way of putting it, but I think the violence, the unexpected nature of this violence, because you don't really expect anything like that from a, let's say, middle grade or young adults book. It just, I find it very fascinating. It
Yeah.
feels almost like something forbidden that you're not supposed to read, especially as a child.
Hmm.
And that is why you probably just relive these childhood memories when you're like sneaking with the book. Like, for instance, in my experience, I was in love with Nightmares on Elm Street. And
Hmm.
I remember how I was actually sneaking these books in, and I was trying to read them. And it definitely gave me some nightmares for some time. And my mom was complaining about it, but I love the experience of it, reading something forbidden. I think I just relive this sort of memories because it does feel as something forbidden. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? And this might seem like an incredibly dumb question. So forgive me if I'm displaying my ignorance to the internet, but that's kind of also what my channel's been for the past 4 or 5 months. How does Russia compare to the UK in terms of what is kind of permissible for people to consume? Does that make sense? In terms of violence and things like that. I'm always curious,
Yeah.
conscious that other cultures have different standards about what is acceptable.
No, I think it's totally okay. Probably it was different before the fall of Soviet Union because we used to have quite a high level of censorship at the time.
Yeah,
So it was all pretty much checked by the party and surveyed, and only permitted books were published
yeah.
in general. But after the fall of Soviet Union, it's pretty much like Wild West. You can do whatever you want, you can read whatever you want. Yes, I never really had issues in terms of censorship, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just curious because you know here, and especially in the Middle Eastern context I'm in, I'm quite shocked that the zombie books are floating around. But it's also an interesting question from the UK because when I was growing up, I should let me just say as well, I kind of share your thoughts. I'm really enjoying it. I don't think it's ever going to be like top 10 material, but for what it is, it's immensely enjoyable. And I
It's
feel
very exciting pulp period.
yes. Apart from Beck, which we'll get to, which I think is
Yeah,
genuinely literary genius, but we'll come back to that.
yeah.
Um, I'm enjoying it immensely, and I think a lot of that enjoyment is tied to the violence. The book isn't just non-stop like blood on the page, but when it goes there, it really goes there. And I'm kind of in two minds about this violence, and I wanted to have this conversation with you before we get to spoilers because I can remember being 12, 13 and reading these books and not really thinking much of it. And maybe what you said, the word forbidden, is appropriate because you do feel like you're like sneaking downstairs and watching like an R-rated movie when your parents are asleep. There is that kind of
Yeah.
forbidden feeling to it. But now that I'm older, my son is 4, he's 4.5. And I just think about the fact as I was reading it that my son is what, 8 years away from where I was when I read these books. And I'm now sitting here about what, 18, 19 years away from having read these books. He's an order of magnitude closer to reading these books in terms of age than I am. And I do sit here and I wonder, we are enjoying these books because they're violent, but could I recommend them to a young kid and not feel any sort of discomfort over that? I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'm not really probably the person that is qualified to answer this sort of questions just because I don't have children of
Yeah.
my own. But at the same time, I think it's like, even judging by my experience, I think it just depends on the level of maturity of a child. Depends on their level of ability to cope with traumas and stress, let's say.
Hmm.
If you know that your child is very fragile mentally, let's say, I wouldn't recommend to read something like that. That probably it will really scar them. But at the same time, if you feel that your children are pretty much adaptable and they can process this sort of things, and especially maybe while they're in this age gap, let's say, when they're still coming to you with questions and discussions, and they're still not trying to remove themselves from your life
Yeah.
completely, like usually probably happens after 16 years old or
I
something
can't
like that,
wait. I can't
around that
wait.
age.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe, just maybe, it can be actually a good trigger to have some important conversations, because I think with this series, it's not only about violence, because there are a few moments there that probably can trigger some important conversations.
Yes.
Because even in terms of violence, I remember when I was a child, I used to read quite some violent, even children books as well. As I said already, we didn't really have any censorship, and my parents weren't really monitoring what the hell I'm reading.
Yeah.
So I was reading everything. It never really scarred me. Yes, maybe I was scared at that moment, maybe it gave me a few nightmares, but in general, I grew up as a mentally stable human being, hopefully. That's my subjective opinion. But I think in case of this book, there are some topics that can be actually discussed with the parent, because one of the fault of this book, I personally find, that some of these questions are not properly discussed. They're just there. These things happen, but author doesn't make an attempt to actually unpack it.
Yes.
And I personally hate when authors are giving you like a page of, I don't know, moral lessons after something happens in the book. But at the same time, I think there could be a better attempt made in this series to actually just discuss certain very questionable things, to be honest.
Yes.
Yes, maybe it could be a trigger actually to have this important conversation with your child. But again, it works only if you actually read these books with them, if you know what they're actually reading.
Yeah.
Because if you just buy these books to them and they just consume all this sometimes violent and questionable content, and you're not even aware of it,
Yes.
well, you're just missing on this opportunity.
Yes. I don't really disagree with any of that. I think I know it's hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but I think one thing we spoke about in our call yesterday, let's keep mentioning the call that no one's ever going to see. But you talked about secrecy and the fact that especially in Grubbs Grady's books 1, 3, and 5, he is constantly holding on to other people's secrets. And there's that question as to which, is it okay for him to be holding on to life-altering secrets that are not really his secrets? They belong to other people, and he is the conscious arbiter of who gets to know what. And I think that was a
Yes.
really interesting point you raised. But
Yeah.
before we move on to spoilers, there's one thing we absolutely need to. I'm aware that we're already at about like 20 minutes because, yeah. But not quite, actually. We're doing okay. But I need to make sure that we need to talk about the book that we both agree stands heads and shoulders.
Let's do the rating first,
Okay.
and we'll go through back. So at least to give people an idea which books we like the most, give us a rating. And after that, we'll talk about the best books so far.
Fine by me. So do you want to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? We already know what one is.
Okay, my favorite book so far from these 5 books is book 4, Back. I
Yeah.
actually made a list for myself. Just
Did you?
remember, I'm not getting confused with all these books. So, book 4 is my favorite, and I know it's the case for you. I think it's pretty much perfect, especially if we consider it as a young adult book, or
Yes, I would agree.
maybe something between middle grade and young adult. I would say young adult.
Yeah.
I think middle grade will be absolutely terrified. Um, my second favorite book is it? Yes, it's book 2, Demon Thief,
Okay.
which is very interesting because two of my favorite books are led by
Grubbs Grady.
characters that are not Grubbs Grady.
Because Grubbs
I, for
Grady is
some
a
reason,
jerk.
I don't really vibe with him.
Yeah.
Sorry?
He's a jerk. And you know what? I think we'll talk about this. I think he changes from book to book. I don't think he's a consistent character, but we'll come to that.
I think he is getting a little bit more annoying in the fifth book, to be honest, in
Yes.
my opinion. I think
Okay.
in first book he was still quite tolerable, and I really felt for him because he was going through very, very traumatic things. But it's actually he's getting worse and worse, in my opinion.
Okay.
But yes, my third book in my rating list is the first book, Lord Laws, our introduction to the series. And after that, it's book three, Slaughter. And my least favorite is the fifth book, Blood Beast.
Okay. I have gone back and forth and I've changed my mind multiple times. I can tell you what's at the bottom. Slaughter's at the bottom, which is book three. I've said a few times on my channel the books should be judged by what they're trying to do. And it's an interesting one because I think Slaughter is trying to emulate like a B movie horror feel, and it achieves it, but I didn't enjoy it very much. I would follow that
I
up
think,
with, well, let me get through, right? So, Slaughter, Lord Loss, Blood Beast, Blood Beast. I would agree with you. The Grubbs Grady ones are at the bottom, but I do think Blood Beast has some merit to it.
okay.
Demon Thief, although something about Demon Thief really rubs me the wrong way, and we'll get to that. And I think Beck, which is what I was going to say a few minutes earlier, is like a huge jump between these four books. Beck for me is a really wonderful, basically standalone novel that can and should be read, I would say, and potentially studied. I think it's an amazing little work of art sandwiched into a enjoyable young adult series. And I was staggered by how good it was when I was rereading it this time.
Yeah,
Yeah. I guess we
it
can,
was amazing. It was pretty much perfect, literally.
yeah.
It was just amazing.
So Beck, for people who don't know, you can read it as a standalone because it's of all the series, it's the one that's the most like further apart because it's not set in modern day. I think Ireland is supposed to be Ireland or UK or kind of Western. But Beck is set in like 400, 500, 300 AD Ireland. And Beck is the orphan priestess magician of a small village that is getting in an area, I think it's supposed to be Ireland in general, that is just getting pummeled and pounded by demons every night. And Beck goes on a journey with a few other characters who we won't talk about for the sake of spoilers, but Beck basically goes on a journey to halt the demon invasion of Ireland. This book is 250 large print pages, and it is fabulous. I don't know if you want to pick up the torch from there and rave about this book, but I just think it should be read. And I would buy the broken binding edition of Beck for £50 easily. So
Really? Do they have it?
no, they don't. They don't even have audio. The audiobooks stop at book six. I'm going to have to transition to
Really?
yeah. They stopped at book six.
Maybe because it's a lot older series and maybe not many people are picking it up at the moment. I don't know, really.
Maybe. I
You
mean, the
should.
Goodreads ratings are
It's
quite high.
really fun. It's really fun. People listening to this video, give Demonata a go. It's so
Do
fun.
do you want to do Beck spoilers or spoiler free very quickly?
No, I think you gave a very good overview of back. I think we will leave the rest for the spoiler section of this video. I just wanted to go back to Slaughter
Yeah.
and just explain my opinion why it didn't probably work well for me and maybe for you. But in my case, I just felt that, I don't know, it just feels like outside of the main series
Hmm.
because I think it was just the sort of annex of the series because it was in a completely different place and they just try to create this movie set, and it felt that it didn't really progress the main plot of the series. It was just like a book filler, let's say, that okay,
Felt like
we are
fan
going
fiction.
on this. Sorry.
Fan fiction. It felt like fan fiction to me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally like we are going on this side quest.
Yes.
All this book is about the side quest, and after that, we're going back to the main series. So generally, the plot didn't progress during this book, even though, like, with each book, we get some sort of plot progression. You see that the series is evolving. With Slaughter, it was just absolutely outside of the series. The only thing that maybe questionably progressed, we get a little bit of mentioning of lambs, this order that controls werewolves, let's say. But that's it. The rest was just absolutely out of the series. It just felt weird. Literally, I felt like this book didn't need to be written, let's say.
I think
It's harsh.
we're
But
now
it's
walk
like we.
we're now walking into spoilers, I think. So shall we put the big spoiler shutters down and say we're now going to actually get into it because I think we're beginning
Yes.
to tiptoe into it. So if you have watched so far and you haven't read any Demonata stuff, genuinely, it's worth it. Book one will take you an afternoon, less than. And it's a really good window. If nothing else, it's a really entertaining window into what the youth are reading or were reading these days. Because I think it does open up a very interesting conversation about the violence and to what extent we should be kind of policing what children read. Because children are reading this because it's violent.
And
Yeah,
And if your children are reading at this moment, read it with them. Read it with them. So
yeah,
you can actually talk about this sort of subjects and just don't leave it with
yes,
them for them to process
yeah,
and to create this very weird thoughts after that.
yeah. Because there are some,
Books.
yeah, some things that we need to talk about. Right. Okay. So spoilers. We're there. Um, let's backtrack very quickly because I want to get into that slaughter stuff, and I don't disagree with anything you said. But I want to kind of go a bit more broad for a minute, and I want to just take another look at that violence, because it's very easy to say that something is violent. And then just leave it there, and then everyone, especially teenagers, go, yeah, but I know I've played Grand Theft Auto. I sound so old. Forgive me, I sound so old, but I know what it's like to be 13, 14 years old and thinking that you have a handle on violent media and that it's not affecting you when the reality is it is affecting you. And I think that's never been more pressing than in today's day and age. And we spoke about this in our live stream last week with Shay and Chris. But the violence here is so pronounced and it's so horrific that it's really quite inescapable. And it does make me flirt with the idea of to what extent, should we have maybe like a stamp on the book, like we have with like music albums and things like that. And let me just draw your attention to maybe two different um, violent episodes that happened that really gave me proper full-on chills. Um, and they're two very different ones. So in fact, let me give you three. So the first one is the fact that Colonel Fleck in book two literally takes a bath in lava. And we see that from his perspective. Like, I think the analogy I used the other day was Mario. When Mario falls in the lava and the little ghost kind of airlifts him
Mhm.
out and puts him back. That's kind of what happens to Colonel Fleck. Just on a random kind of standalone page, our boy gets absolutely dosed in like sun-like temperatures. His skin and muscle melt off. Um, and that just is something that happens to our boy. So there's something like that kind of very obvious, apparent, nightmarish stuff. But for me, that's one of the lesser examples of the violence that happens in this series that kind of gives me the slightly raised eyebrows. So the second one is the end of Beck, and which I think is magnificently done, and I wouldn't change it. But it's genuinely haunting because I mean as you've read at the end of Beck, what happens is the main character saves the day, and then gets shut in a dark cave with no possibility of escape, and gets torn limb from limb, screaming. And again, that word entrails, I think, is used, or innards, as she gets basically, what's the word, eviscerated
It's
piece by piece. It's incredibly bleak and haunting. And I told you when we were reading it, I didn't tell you what was happening, but I told you that the end of Beck is one of the parts of the Demonata that has stayed with me for 20 years. Because it genuinely is like um shrivelingly scary. And then the third one, and then I'll pass it back to you, that maybe is the most gratuitous, and I haven't quite worked out how I feel about it. Now, forgive me, because this might be the start of book six, because there's a cliffhanger between books five and six, and I've just started book six. But there's a scene at the end of book five where they're on a plane. I'm tired of all these demons on the
late.
plane. And Junie, who is the human character associated with Lord Loss, takes a baby out of a father's arms. Is this the end of book five or the start of book six? End of book
Five
five.
still.
Wrenches this baby out of this man's hand, kisses the baby, like something maternal almost, which makes the baby shrivel up and become a desiccated mummy-like thing. And then she just lets it go. And that's the one I was like, maybe it's because I'm a father, but I'm also like, is this strictly necessary, Darren Shan? Or is this you just seeing how far you can crank the dial up? So I think it's an interesting conversation because that middle one, the end of Beck, I think is beautifully done. But I do think there are moments where it just feels like, what's the word? Intensity for intensity's sake. And I don't want to retread our old conversation, but I am wondering how you found specific moments now as you were reading it.
No, I definitely agree about the violence, but I think in general it is absolutely horrific book series. But at the same time, I feel it really fits the style of the series because we already know what to expect. That no one is safe, anything can happen. and you're just already anticipating this sort of things.
Yeah.
What, for instance, I know that you mentioned that you weren't listening to some of my voice messages
Forgive me.
about the series because we're trying to have some discussions in the chat as well, but we just decided to keep it for this video.
So wait, can I explain what happened there? So Anna said, I listen to your voice messages. I do. But you sent me like 10 minutes, and the start of the voice message was something like, so about Blood Beast. And I was like, no, we're going to save this. So I promise I do listen generally. But sorry to cut you off.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's fine. But I think in general, one of the things that are actually pointed out in that messages that you already sort of feel the style of the series, so you expect something horrific to happen. So I would say it gives me feel of there is no hope.
Yes, it's
It's like
incredibly
there
bleak.
is no happily ever after in the series. You
Yeah.
feel that everything literally like reading it, I haven't finished the series, so David knows how it ends, but I keep
My
telling him not
my
to tell me
memory is
anything.
so my memory is so
But
fuzzy. There's two things I remember from book 6 through 10 that I'm not going to spoil.
no, don't tell me.
Aside from that, it's
But
very rocky. Yeah.
as a new reader, I definitely feel that anyone can die and probably everyone will die, and there is no hope literally in the
Yeah.
series because everything is bleak, everything is very violent. But at the same time, it's not only about that. I think it's not only about violence because yes, it is horrific, but I think it just fits it.
Mm.
But what I find some of the things are, let's say, unexpected. It's not even about violence. When something good happens, I instantly get very, very suspicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, that's too good to be true. No, it's like something is really, really wrong here. Can you imagine the series that creates such an atmosphere when you expect only bad things to happen? And when something good happens, you're like, no,
Mhm.
no, it's not gonna happen. Something is really, really wrong. There is a catch here. And I was talking about Junie. When I met her in Slaughter, I'm not sure if you had the same sort of feeling with
The
this
vibe.
character in Slaughter. Because I was thinking she fits too nicely
Mhm.
in the frame. Too good to be true. She is fishy. And by the end of Slaughter, book 3,
Yes.
I was genuinely expecting that it will be revealed that she was behind all these demon attacks in the book,
Yes.
on this movie set. And I was so shocked when it didn't happen and she just disappeared. I was like, was I wrong?
Yes.
What's happening here?
Yes.
And I was so sort of, I don't know, vindicated probably in Blood Beast when she reappeared and she was so perfect again. And she was just literally trying to slide herself into the picture again, but in
Yeah.
such a perfect way. She was like this angel in flesh. And I was like, no, you don't ring true. Something is really, really wrong with you. And one of the reasons I put it in that message is why I didn't like Blood Beast. Because you see the situation that something is really wrong here. Why this person is just like perfectly normal in all this chaos, and why, even though our main characters, not even Grabs Grady, but his uncle Dervish, are
Dervish.
so experienced in this sort of things, why don't they pick it up? It is just this person appears in these moments when everything goes very, very wrong, everything goes south,
Yes.
all hell breaks loose, and there's Junie here, this seemingly angel person, and no one picks up that something is really wrong with this person.
Yeah.
And especially when she starts wielding magic, even though this is inconsistency, it was really grabbing me wrong way, to be honest, in Blood Beast during the book, because throughout the series, at least so far, we are constantly reminded that there are not many mages in the universe. There is a one or two ages during the generation. It's so rare.
Yeah.
It's pretty much impossible to meet. And here we are. We get Grabs Grady and Junior at the same time, and they're just wielding magic, and nothing is really wrong about it. Why? No one is questioning it. Is it normal? Where did she get this power from? No one asked her. She just gave some very implausible explanations that during her travels, she met someone and they were like teaching her magic. How?
Yes.
How
Well, I
could she
think, I mean,
meet someone?
have
And
you
how
made any
she's
guess
an
about that? Because
sorry?
I have a guess about that, and I genuinely don't remember. But I think we've met Junie before.
No, she was in Slaughter,
No, I
but
think
I don't think we
before
met her
then.
before, no?
No, so I could be wrong. I'm hesitant to talk about it because maybe it's some remnant of my very
You think
very.
in Demon Thief
I think she's the character from Demon Thief who sides up with Lord Loss. What other human would be
with
siding?
the pimples,
Yeah,
the
I forget her
girl.
name from the
Yeah,
1800s.
the girl with pimples. She turned her back. Maybe,
Yeah.
but she wasn't albino though.
Because well, maybe but I think what I'm noticing with these five books, and again, I'm struggling to hypothesize because it sounds as though I know exactly what's going to happen in book 6 through 10. I remember two things about 6 through 10, which I'll mention what they are in the next video. But I think there's more characters popping up in, especially in Grubbs Grady's stuff, than we realize. And I think the other one is Bran and Barnabas. I
Yeah,
think Bran from Beck is Barnabas. I don't know if that's been confirmed or not, but and I think the little goblin homeless man around Bloodbeast, I think that's Barnabas.
do you think
Yes.
he was like a simple boy? No,
Well, I mean, simple boy, but I mean, 2,000 years does
he was
something.
the only one surviving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe,
But
maybe
I think one thing the series does very well, and I mentioned in every video, my favorite series of all time is the Malazan Book of the
just
Fall.
merging everything together.
But that's something that I love about Malazan, and I feel like this. So what Malazan does, if I can just
Could
mention it
be,
like for a
could
minute,
be.
is Malazan has all these different standalone stories that begin to integrate very cleverly, and you don't even know what's happening until you get a certain way through.
Could be.
And Demonata seems to do the same thing, where I think these things have integrated much more tightly than we have realized. So,
Maybe.
but just going back, I think let's talk about the Grubbs Grady books in general. Now
Yes.
that we're on Blood Beast, I think we can take books one
I
through.
don't like him.
And I'm aware that I skipped over your Slaughter stuff. So I totally agree with what you said about Slaughter previously. I think it's a filler book. I think it's a weird one. And I think it's one of these books that tries to defend itself by its plot because it's set on like a horror movie, B movie setting. And so the style is very horror movie, B movie. But that doesn't make me forgive it. You're right. It feels entirely superfluous. The main villain, I forget her name, the director, I think is just too
Yeah,
over the top silly.
yeah,
Um, and the whole thing just feels fan fiction and a little bit too camp in the meaning of like excessive. It feels too excessive and unstitched from the other four. So I would totally agree
yeah,
with that Slaughter is lacking in that regard. I think he's just setting up the novel to have a big blood bath at the end, which he pulls off quite well. And the reason I like Blood Beast, and it goes back to the darkness and the depressing element that you've talked about so well. I think what the series as a whole does very well is this real like nihilistic, and it's so fascinating that this is like a young adult book, but the sense of doom that pervades these stories is so clear and pervasive. And what I love that Blood Beast does in book five, especially because I think it's going to be part one of two, um,
yeah,
is it just sets this slow creep of despair. Because the main character basically gets a terminal illness in the first like 30 pages. You know that Grubbs is becoming a werewolf, and you know what that entails. And in the universe of the Demonata, if you become a werewolf, it's not like every month. You just become basically a mindless
yeah.
beast for the rest of your life. And so you are aware that Grubbs
The rest of your very short life.
yeah, and you know that anyone could die at any point. So the fact that this character halfway through book five contracts what is this universe's equivalent of a terminal illness, you do think this might go to the very end, and this book might end with him, sacrificing himself in the same way that Beck did, and then we're just left with poor Colonel to carry the series. But I really love that sense of doom. I wasn't a huge fan of the teenage drama stuff. I understand why that is in a young adult book. I understand that's not marketed at me. But that slower story, especially the back half, with his mate from high school dying, him having to cover it up, him having this mystery of the cave, and again the connections. I think there's clear connections there.
Yeah,
Um, and then it layered on top of the fact that he is becoming a monster, also layered on top of the fact that his now mother-in-law is slowly but gradually revealed to be a horrific human being. Those things create that sense of despair and dread so effectively that I forgive the fact that A, there's so much teenage melodrama that I find just frivolous, and B, Grubs Grady, I feel like, is quite an inconsistent character between books 1, 3, and 5.
Yeah.
The reason that I rank it in the middle is because of that sense of doom, which I think is done so well.
No, I agree with this point, so definitely.
Yeah.
I think just for me, there are a few other, let's say, things that really tip the scale down for me
Okay.
personally. First of all, yes, pretty much first 50% of the book is just about teenage drama.
Yeah.
It is great to read if you're a child, but as a young adult, probably you will not be really that fascinated.
It's dull.
Another
Really
thing,
dull. Yeah. He's setting up the party. I'm like, should we get popcorn or should we get, where can we get booze from? I'm like, I don't care. I
yeah,
don't care about any of this. Yeah.
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 No, but I think it's like the minor thing for me. I do understand why it's happening, so I don't really have like a big complaint out of it, to be honest. It's just okay, it's there, but it's okay. I can forgive it just because these books are not written for us, if you think about it.
Yeah.
They're written for children, so they'll probably really appreciate it. But there are a few other questionable things that I personally, sorry, losing my voice,
You okay?
that that I found very questionable in general. First of all, the thing between Grubs and Billy, his brother,
Yeah.
half brother, because their relationship really deteriorates in this book,
Yes.
but it's never being addressed because Billy is being constantly bullied by Grub's friends,
Mm.
but Grubs doesn't really do anything about it. He doesn't want to talk to Devish, and even though Devish sees what's happening, he never actually tries to have a conversation with Grubs about it. And Grubs just like leaves it. And there is this sort of conversation about it, but it's like, okay, it's cool. This sort of things happen. What can you do about it? I don't think that's okay. We
And
are
there's,
talking
there's
about bullying here.
and there's a line, something like, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the line is something along the lines of, any child knows exactly what I'm talking about, and any adult has to stay out of it because they have no say in it. Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Probably it was written. When was it written? 90s,
Uh,
2000s.
early to mid 2000s, I think.
Yeah, maybe it was more okay at the time. I don't know, but we are talking about bullying here. I think it's important to give some sort of message that it is not okay if your brother, even your friend, not even about being brother, if your friend is being bullied in front of you, just do something about it.
Yes.
Why
Yeah.
you just leave the situation go as it is and just like, yeah, enjoy the ride, let's say. That's the first thing I didn't like. Another thing, when Grubs and Billy and Locke are going to this cave to do their excavation, you clearly see that Grubs is struggling with his like atrophy. What do you call it?
Lycanthropy.
When he's turning into a werewolf, and it really makes him sick. And Billy sees it, and Billy knows about the curse of the family that they're turning into werewolves because he himself experienced it. He was the first one before Grubs, and they literally saved Billy from this curse because they had a deal with Lord Loss and they had to basically fight for his life. He
Yeah.
knows about it. He
Yeah.
sees what's happening to Grubs, and he's still insisting doing this bloody excavation, even though Grubs is saying like, "No, guys, let's go home."
Yeah.
And Billy sees all this like physical suffering, but he doesn't even think about the possibility of Grubs turning into a werewolf himself, even though he knows that they're family members, that
Yes.
they're related. He
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily know that they're brothers, but he thinks that they're cousins or something like that. Is it cousins? How he sees it?
He thinks they're
Yes,
cousin. He thinks
cousins.
Dervish is his dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
So therefore they're both affected by the curse. And he knows about it, but it's like this sort of, I don't know, ignorance, but it's such an ignorance that whether you feel that it just fits the plot
The plot hole.
because it
The
doesn't
plot
make
hole, isn't it?
sense.
Yeah.
It's just there for the plot. Even for Grabs, he goes to this cave and he feels that something is wrong. But
Yes.
he's like, okay, maybe we can stay here for a while. No, you're turning into werewolf. You feel that something is really, really wrong here. But you're okay. Maybe I'll talk with about it with Dervish. Maybe not. Okay, let's stay here for a while. And Billy like, yay, let's do excavation. And you're like, it doesn't make sense
Yeah.
because both of them went through hell. They know what's happening. It's not like they're I don't know, innocent children. They
Mm.
know the universe, they know everything about demons, they know about the curses, but they behave like nothing really happened before. It just didn't make sense, to be honest. If I personally felt that it was um just there for the plot, let's say.
I think it's definitely. I think you could just call it a plot hole as well. I like the fact that the characters aren't recognizing this key information that I believe Billy was told about in Slaughter.
Yeah,
I guess you could always defend it by arguing, oh, they're traumatized and they're teenagers don't think straight. But
silly.
I think it's silly. Yeah, I totally agree with
It's
you.
silly.
Yeah, Grub
Yeah,
says,
another thing. Sorry, I'm just so excited about
go go tell me.
another thing I already mentioned. Junie's magic.
Yeah,
She just started building magic. Come on, we have one or two mages in the generation on the whole planet during the generation.
yeah,
Why there are suddenly two of them in the same family in the same place, and no one is asking her where the hell she learned all of it? Because generally, if you read the series, and probably you've read it if you're still with us now, so
yeah,
you don't mind spoilers, you're aware that normal people, even with some magical powers, they are not true magicians. They are not able to use the magic in normal situations. They can build some magic only with the presence of demons when
yes,
the Demonata is open. And she can build the magic, just nothing is happening. Like, that's normal for her. She is a mage. Grabs is a mage. She's a mage. And at some point, like, Devish, I think, starts doing some stuff as well. And I'm like,
yeah.
what's happening here? I think it's just like a plot hole. I don't know.
Do you know?
I didn't really like.
Do you know the TV show Community?
No.
So that it's an American sitcom, but they changed writers for the fourth season, and the fourth season is kind of infamous because all the characters kind of become weird like shadows of themselves and make really stupid decisions. So when the original writers came back for season five, they said they the way they explained this away is they said that season four there was I think a gas leak in the university that the sitcom is set. That was the gas leak season, because
Maybe
everyone felt
same
so
here.
off. And that's definitely how that book feels. I would, while I still enjoyed it, and I think that sense of doom is there, it feels like everyone's an idiot. And that's the comments that I'm seeing as
Yeah. And
well.
another thing.
Yeah. On you go.
Yeah, and the last thing I would like to actually point it out, I think there are two big opportunities to discuss the sort of things with your child. If, for instance, they're reading this book, first is the bullying against Billy. I think it's very, very important point that you probably have to discuss with your children if they're reading these books. And another one is this sudden turn in Junie and how she literally, because all the books she was really trying to insert herself in the situation, to be part of this family, to
Yeah.
be partner to Dervish and become mother to Grubs. And she was very upfront about it, that I want to become your mother because I lost my own child.
Yeah.
She literally told it in the book. And in the end of the book, all of a sudden, she kisses him as a woman,
Yep.
not as a mother, literally. And she professes him that she loves him and tells him that they should run away. Two issues for me here.
Just two issues.
From no, no,
I've got like
two
seven issues
perspectives,
with
let's
that.
say.
Yeah, yeah.
I have an issue with her perspective because it's not even about age gap, because I think he's here about 16 and she's like in her 40s probably.
Mhm.
But it's not just the age gap, it's about power dynamic, because there is a power imbalance in this potential relationship and he's underage.
Yes.
If, for instance, there is an age gap between two adults, no issues because everyone knows what's happening. He's a child, he's 16. There is a very ripe moment for the conversation with your child.
Yes.
And another issue I have is actually from his perspective. Can you imagine? I don't know. I was thinking, like, when I was reading it, let's imagine I'm back in my 16s and stepfather, because she's his stepmom pretty much by this point.
Mhm.
If my stepdad all of a sudden kisses me, tells me that he loves me, and he's like in 40s, 50s, let's say, and that we should run away, is that normal? I would be very disturbed. But Grabs is just going ahead with it.
So your issue,
He's
obviously,
sort of
I mean, obviously, we like
he's sort of shocked.
But the Junie stuff is supposed to be like manipulative and horrible. So like, and I know you get
Yeah,
that.
but he doesn't pick up on it. He's like, okay, yeah, I probably just should go ahead with it. Yes, he starts thinking about the sort of technicalities of it, how they will survive, how they will find this remote place that they
Yeah.
can live together. And I'm like, wow, what's happening here? Your parent, your step parent, just kissed you, pretty much like assaulted you, told you that they love you and that they should run away. You never really try to actually process it. What's happening here? Why there is such a change?
I
You
mean, he's
never
also
had this
turning into a
conversation with your
werewolf at the same
parent,
time.
actually.
Yeah.
Sorry?
He's also turning into a werewolf at the same time. Like, dude has a lot on.
No, but still, it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no, but try to imagine this sort of situation, how you would feel. But I didn't feel this sort of trepidation
Yeah.
on Grab's side. I
Yeah.
felt like he had some sort of distress, some level of distress, let's say, but I didn't feel that he was really actually shocked, and he didn't really think that something is wrong about it. It never really crossed his mind, like, oh, why my mother is kissing me and telling me that she loves me and we should run away.
There's a gas leak in
He was
Carshot.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, Junie loves me. We should run away.
I
She can save me. And he starts thinking about technicalities of it. I was like, something is really wrong here.
Do you know, I agree and I disagree. So I think that the Junie stuff is quite, I think it's horrible. But I think, and it's intentionally horrible, right? And I think one of the things the book does quite well is that it gives you this slow burn of she's fishy, as you said, to by the end of the book, like, oh, this person isn't just an outright monster. And I think the book has that slow reveal where different people will pick up on it at different times. And by that point, you realize that this person is deeply, deeply manipulative and is doing whatever she can to get Grubs out of Carcery Vale. So, and I know you wouldn't disagree with any of that. I think what you're saying that I would totally agree with is the fact that um, Grubbs is not picking up on it, and it happens very fast. And I know that our boy has a lot on, as I just said. Like he's becoming a werewolf. He's just lost his friend. He's in an incredibly fragile state. But even so, like a little bit more dwelling on the page, I think would have maybe served that aspect of the plot very well because they go from standing in the cage in Carson Reveal to an airplane. It feels like in about 7 pages. Um,
Yeah.
so I would totally agree with that. What I would say about Blood Beast, I do want to move us on to, oh my goodness, Demon Thief, which we still haven't talked about. The one thing I do like about Blood Beast, the horror that comes from Blood Beast is very different from the 4 books that came before. I guess maybe Beck has this too, the sense of doom. But I think that the most horror, one of the most horrifying moments, one of the most earned, non-gratuitous horror moments of the series for me is that point where Locke has just died and Grubbs is alone in the cave with Locke's body and the ghost of this girl who it
Back.
seems quite obvious who it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just didn't want to like but it seems very obvious this is the cave they were in book 4. The ghost of Beck is there, kind of talking to him, and I'm assuming like old Irish. Forgive me, I don't know what the name for that language would be.
Yeah. Actually, when it
That's
happens,
such a
sorry for
haunting,
interrupting you.
terrifying, very vivid moment because all of these horrible moments, everything that happened in book 4 is there. Grubbs' lycanthropy is there. Dealing with the death of a friend and also not just the death of the friend, but the expectation of what is about to happen when everyone comes down and finds this body. The fact that he has got romantic feelings for Locke's sister and this whole relationship has now been disrupted, although I hated the teenage drama, those 4 or 5 things kind of crystallized in that moment in that cave is the reason that I actually did think that Blood Beast has legs. And it's not my favorite, but I also don't think it's by any means a failure of a book. Um, I think the Junie
No,
stuff.
it's definitely not failure. I still enjoyed all of them.
Yeah,
It's just these things. I'm like,
yeah. I think that the Junie stuff is a hard one, and I think I'd agree it does merit a conversation with someone if you're reading it because that's the other thing is would all kids necessarily pick up on that manipulation as strongly as it comes across on the page? Maybe, but it still would merit
I
a
mean,
chat.
come on. It's not even by this point, it's not even the manipulation. She already revealed her position, basically, what's actually happening. It's not about manipulation. And he's not able to process it, even though it's so blatantly simple at this point.
Yes.
I
So
don't know. It's just like,
it's the character that's the gas leak that's the issue for you, right? The fact that Grubbs is not picking up on any of this.
yeah. But
Yeah.
another thing, I just when you were talking about back in the cave, I tried to interrupt you. I was actually thinking about it when when I started reading it, and her face appeared, and she started talking to him,
Yeah.
and I was actually internally thinking, oh my God, please don't make him understand her. That would break the book for me.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, in books sometimes, like people are going to another planet and everyone speaks English. It's the same. It's like, please don't make him understand her. And when he couldn't understand her, I was like, okay.
I think
Good.
the reason that moment was so haunting for me is that is kind of the dream that most kids have. Like when you dream of ghosts, it's not usually that they're chasing you down a hallway with a knife. The scariest dream when you dream about ghosts and things like that is the ghost just staring at you and things like that. And the attention of the paranormal is what is scary. And I think that scene does it very, very effectively. I do want to move us on to Demon Thief though, because we haven't talked about Colonel Flem, who is the worst named protagonist besides Scrubs Grady. It's not, they don't have
But
great.
actually really enjoyed him as a protagonist. I found him a little bit weird in the beginning, but the more I progressed with the book, I actually really appreciated him.
I mean, he basically has depression, doesn't he? I mean,
Yeah,
I read it a couple months ago now, but the it's very, very obvious on the page that this boy is lonely, but not just lonely. I think,
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's something along the lines of like, I just go to bed because I have nothing, I don't want to
yeah.
get along with my thoughts. There's some really kind of quite, not on the nose necessarily, because I don't know if kids would pick up on it, but quite obvious mental health difficulties that Colonel is dealing with. I would agree. I think
He literally created a brother
yeah,
out
yeah,
of his loneliness.
so this is why I didn't rate Demon Thief as high. Let me give you my opinion of Demon Thief and
Yeah,
then I'll pass it to yourself. I love books that go on road trips, fantasy books that go on road trips and go off the map. And I loved kind of us kind of stepping into the Demonata's world. I love the idea of one of the main themes in the Demonata series, it seems to me, is to be the sacrifice, not just of ourselves, but our sacrifice. But there is that sacrifice of self, but there's also sacrifice of others and the idea that you can't save everyone and that eventually like these characters do watch dozens of people die just on the regular and they opt out of helping them because they've got bigger fish to fry. And I think Demon Thief does that excellently, so I love that. I love Colonel Fleck. I love the cast of characters we meet. I love seeing young Dervish. I think I prefer young Dervish to older Dervish,
yeah.
like who is like the worst mentor figure ever. But the reason that I have slight issues with Demon Thief is I think the twist, even from a young adult perspective, is mind-numbingly, stupidly obvious from the jump. And that did sour it a
But I
bit.
still enjoyed it.
But didn't you spot it from like the first page? Oh, he has a brother now that hasn't been mentioned before, who's called Art. Like,
Yeah, no, but I still enjoyed it.
yeah.
I think part of enjoyment for me
Mm,
and why, for instance, Beck and Demon Thief are my favorite books so far. It's
yeah.
not only about them being not Grubs Grady, which is a very big thing as well, but tell me if you think the same way.
Okay.
In both Beck and Demon Thief, Lord Laws appears as a complex character and not just a blabbering fool. Because think
Yes.
about it, in
Yes.
Lord Laws, he loses an absolutely stupid way. Slaughter, the same. He just outwitted like a fool. He's a bloody demon,
Yeah.
literally. But in both, I can't say much about Blood Beast just because it just like it's to be continued. Let's say we don't really see the resolution of the book. It's just the first book of the duology, let's say. But in both Beck and Blood Thief, he's actually interesting and complex and not simply foolish character.
Yes.
You really appreciate him as a demon there. I think that's like big part of my enjoyment for these books as well, of these books.
You actually anticipated one of the questions I was going to ask you, which is that do you think Lord Loss is a good villain? Um,
In Beck and Demon Thief, I
yeah,
wouldn't even call him a villain there because he's just pursuing some personal interests, not
he's
necessarily humanity destruction. He is interested in mental torture, I would say, than a simple destruction.
yeah,
But it makes him a little bit more interesting. He's not just like the sort of, I don't know, faceless evil for the sake of evil. I just want everyone dead, let's say,
yes.
total destruction. But he's a little bit more, let's say, maybe intellectual, appears
He's
a little bit more
intellectual, but he's
intellectual.
petty at the same time, isn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. But like in both Lord Laws and Slaughter, he looks like a fool. It's like you, teenagers outwitting you. What the hell? Like
I think
you're a master demon. What's happening
I
here?
think there's two Lord Losses, right? There's Lord Loss and Beck and Demon Thief, as you said, who's clever, who's conniving, who is incredibly powerful, and I think he's actually a really good villain. I think you don't need villains to be necessarily morally great if they're ultra powerful. And I think the power of Lord Lost just makes him kind of intriguing. When he comes onto this page, he does have stage presence even at his worst. So I would agree with everything you said, but I would also agree there's a second Lord Lost. I am just copying exactly what you said because I feel like there's a Lord Lost in Slaughter who it's almost when he came on the page, he has like the big mustache. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? He's like, you're falling into my schemes. And then the really stupid human villain of Slaughter goes, "Oh, but you're going to save me, right?" And he's like, "No." And then he like launches his demons at her. And you're right. He feels a lot more thin than he does in other ones. I think he's pretty good in Lord Loss. I think books one,
No,
I'd add Lord
the
Loss
way
to
like
the quality ones.
no, at
No?
least for me, like it felt really weak to be honest because Grabs not even he didn't even outwitted him because in terms of skills he was actually much worse than the rest of the family members.
Yes.
He just sort of broke, let's say, the spell of what was happening by um not caring, let's say.
Yeah.
And Lord Laws just got so frustrated about it and he just started losing his marbles. And I was like, what's happening? You're a demon.
Yeah.
It's
But
like
I think
you're
I
like
enjoy that
teenager is
pettiness
sitting
to him.
like being like a NAS in front of you and you're like being frustrated and like, okay, like I'm losing now.
But I
I
enjoy
don't know.
pettiness, and I also enjoy the contractual nature of his personality, that he does have to stick to his word for better or worse. I love
But he twists though.
yeah, absolutely. But like the end of Beck, when he goes, I probably would, and you can take this with a pinch of salt. I tend to believe him that one of the tragedies at the end of Beck is that Beck is like he says to Beck, I probably would have let you go because I want to see how you change the world. However, I swore 50 pages back that I laid a curse on you and I have to let this happen. Um, and that element I think is very fascinating. He's both very petty and very emotional, while at the same time being extremely powerful. And yet at the same time holding himself to the rules that he has established. So I do find him quite a compelling villain. And I did go back and forth on this at various aspects of the plots, but generally when he
Yeah.
steps on the page or floats onto the page, as the case is, I enjoy him, and even at his worst, he's still very, very magnetic, I think.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I agree. The only thing I was thinking, like, why don't we have other demon masters? It would be interesting actually to have like a more pantheon of demons to
yeah.
actually see some other demon masters as well. But it looks like we're actually interacting only with Lord Laws because the rest of the demons are just like his dogs pretty much
So this is
doing
this
whatever
this is
he.
this is a minor quibble I have with the series as well. Just as we're wrapping up here, I do find that some of the demons are not very compelling. Where it's like, okay, and it's a
Yeah,
dog with a pig's face and horse's feet, and I'm like, are you just playing like Mad Libs with different animals? Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? This one spits acid, and you're kind of like, it
Random animals
feels like
generated.
yeah, exactly. I feel like I've stepped onto No Man's Sky, and we've just got the random procedurally generated demon, which is a shame because Lord Loss is so captivating. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, just going back to Demon Thief very briefly, I enjoy how inventive that novel is. It's really that one and Beck do not are completely opposing different kinds of road trip, and Beck is much more bleak and horrifying, and Demon Thief is just much more of an enjoyable sort of jaunt, as the case may be. But I do.
enjoyable.
I know. He still falls into lava and things like that. The chessboard stuff is
Yes.
good. I think the whole thing about like shark being like floating in space for 1,000 years, like it does get pretty trippy.
Yeah.
But I enjoy a good fantasy book that goes off the map, and the way that Demon Thief goes off the
Yeah.
map. And I think Barnabas is a very interesting character as well, whether or not he is Bran or not.
I did enjoy him.
Yeah, I think he's a really good. Again, that idea of sacrifice, because you do get the sense that Barnabas would kill everyone if it meant that it would stop a demon incursion.
Yeah.
And you know that even to I called Dervish a messed up Gandalf, but the truth is Barnabas is the most messed up hobo Gandalf we'll ever get. And you do get the sense that he would wield the knife and do whatever it takes to our
Yeah.
protagonist that meant that he could get 1% closer towards his own goals. So I'm very intrigued by him, and I hope that he stays on the page for a bit longer. And I'm really curious
Yes.
to see where it goes. I do remember, so here are the two things that no, I can't tell you the first thing that I remember because it's a spoiler. I do generally remember what the ending is. That 10th book, I remember how it wraps up. But I don't remember much about books
Don't tell me.
9. No, I'm not going to tell you. Don't worry. Um, but I find my I do have the vague recollection that books 6 through 10 are not as strong as 1 through 5, but take that with a massive pinch of salt because it's been 20 years. Um, but I remember more from books 1 through 5 than I do 6 through 10, is maybe a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
So, but I often find that with series, to be
Well,
honest,
we'll
in
see.
general. Yeah. But I'm excited to continue. And
Yeah.
it's fun doing this kind of pit stop chat. I don't
Yes.
think there's anything else you wanted to raise on our way out here. I know we're approaching our hour.
Mm, no, I think we're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just very excited to actually continue with the series. I'm reading something else at the moment.
Yeah.
The Road. Yes, very cheerful reading as well.
That's a buddy read that we're doing as well. Where me, you, Chris,
I don't know what's wrong with me.
what?
Literally, every year when I'm checking my reading stats by the end of the year, my main moods for the reading are dark, the sort of like dark moods. I'm like, am I a happy person? What's wrong?
Have you read any other
Yes.
McCarthy? I know you've read The Road, but I forget if you've read anything else by him because he's one of my favorites.
Uh, no, actually, I read The Road. I've tried to read his latest one. I think they were published before he died. I don't remember Stella
Passenger,
Maris or something like that.
Passenger and Stella Maris. Yeah.
Passenger Stella Maris. I
They're
started reading it, but I abandoned it for some reason. I don't remember why, to be honest. I still need to go back to them because I have very beautiful editions. But yeah, I read only Road, and I actually read it quite a while ago, but I still remember everything
yeah.
because it was so traumatizing. But you can't really say that you're enjoying reading it. I don't think anyone enjoys this book, but I found it very fascinating.
I think.
It's
Sorry, Nico.
it's dark. It is dark.
I think it's strangely hopeful, The Road. And I'm interested to talk about it with you and the new booktubers asterisk.
I
Um,
think I love that there is love permeates for the book, even
yeah,
though there is lots of darkness, but you literally feel this trail of love everywhere.
yeah.
But yeah, I found it very fascinating, and I really like it. Yeah, I'm slowly going through it. I didn't really have much time recently because I was very busy. But yes, I'm planning to finish it, and yes, Demonata
I
continues.
was going to say though, and I think sometimes The Road gets the short shrift because Cormac McCarthy, I adore Cormac McCarthy. I've read all his stuff. He's one of my favorite authors. Um, so,
He's very controversial recently as well.
oh yeah,
That's the thing. It's like
deservedly controversial, but I'm not touching that with a barge pole. What I wanted to tell you was that there's a far more bleak book that McCarthy wrote very early on in his career that
is
makes
it Black Meridian?
no, it's not Blood Meridian. I would say even bleaker. He wrote a book called Outer Dark. Um,
I heard of it. I've never read it. I need to
about
read it as well.
150 pages long. It's quite tricky in terms of its prose. It's more like Blood Meridian than it is like The Road. Oh my goodness, right? The Road, conceptually, when you say the synopsis, sounds more bleak. But when you read Outer Dark, this 200-page novel, it goes places. And I would say it ends in a far more existentialistic, did I use that word correctly? Nihilistic sense of
Dread.
despair than anything The Road can dream up. So Outer Dark, if you're really looking for a depressing read to finish your year, um, Child of God is another one that's very short and very brutal, but The Outer Dark is horrifying. Far
I'll
more
check
than
it.
The Road. Yeah. And if you want to do a buddy read
I,
on
I,
that, we
I
can.
need some happy reads probably. I don't know. Like I'm getting depressed.
Oh my
I need
goodness.
something happy.
Yeah, okay. I don't know any Happy McCormick, but tell you what, All the Pretty Horses isn't dreadfully unhappy. There we go. There's one.
Okay, I'm not really sure that you're selling it well, but okay. I'll have a look.
Right. I'm gonna wrap this call up. Thank you very much for joining me, Anna. I'm very much looking forward to books 6 through 10 with you. I really enjoyed our conversation. You always have a very good way of swiveling my opinions on stuff that I think I like. But for the better, genuinely. And it's always a joy to talk to you. So whether The Road, I'm assuming our next conversation will probably be that Road live stream that we did
Yes.
with the guys.
Yes.
So I'll see you then. And in the meantime, everyone else, thank you very much for watching. I will, when this video goes live, it'll probably be about the end of this month. I'm going to put Anna's channel in the description, so very easy to find her. She is absolutely worth a subscription. So please do that. And in the meantime, all the best. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.